Hi everybody, it's Julia, your trusted travel expert, helping you find that je ne sais quoi wherever you are in the world. And one type of trip that is becoming more and more popular, but that might seem daunting to plan on your own, is a multi-generational trip. So that's, more than just you and your kids. It's, throwing in also grandparents or grandchildren, what have you. And that's something that I do a lot for not only my clients, but I also just came back from a 10-day trip with my whole family. And we had 3 generations. So we had my mother, then me and my siblings, and then their kids, who now are teenagers, which is sort of a whole nother thing. But it seems to be a very common time. People seem to think once kids sort of hit middle school, start learning more about history, become a little bit more mature, that's a better time for you to, take them abroad, for example, which I totally understand. So I've got a couple things I want you to consider when you're thinking about planning a multi-generational trip. The first thing to think about is obviously where you're going to go, and that, you can go anywhere in the world, of course. And in fact, I think there are certain destinations that are fantastic for multi-generational. But in my opinion, what you want to look for is a destination that's going to give you a good variety of activities. Because, especially if you're traveling with maybe teens, they might already be learning some history, might be interested in some history, have seen some movies that, bring different historical moments to life. And so you want a little bit of that, I would think. But you also want, some activity, some adventure. You don't want to be taking them all day long to, different museums or palaces or, all history all the time. At the same time, I wouldn't think that, at this point, you'd want kind of all beach or all activity all the time. It completely depends on your kids and your family and all that good stuff. But in my opinion, the best, especially if you're talking about multi-generational trips, you're going to want to find a destination that has a bunch of different types of activities to do. For this particular trip, we chose Bavaria, Munich and Bavaria, and Salzburg and kind of northwestern Austria. Lots of different reasons for that. We've got World War II buffs in our family. We have Sound of Music fans in our family. So that sort of fit our family. We also looked a lot at Switzerland, but for our particular family and our generational ages, Switzerland was going to maybe be a little too active for some folks. So the second thing that you want to look at if you're planning a multi-generational trip on, just yourself independently, I will remind you that there are some wonderful tour operators for families or multi-generational. Talc Bridges does beautiful trips. Adventures by Disney does beautiful trips. And G Adventures now has partnered with National Geographic for multi or family trips. And so if you have a smaller family and you want your kids to interact with a larger group of kids, then those kinds of trips might be great for you. But for us, in this particular instance, we wanted to just go on our own. So we did. And to give you an idea of the overall itinerary, because I'm not going to go into it in detail, we did 3 nights in Munich, 4 nights outside of Salzburg, and then 2 nights in the mountains along the border between Austria and Germany. We were in the Tyrol region of Austria, and then 1 more night finally at the airport. And for us, the direct flight from Charlotte to Munich, that's sort of why we did it that way. We could have easily continued on to Vienna instead, but that's what we chose. So when organizing the trip, I've got a couple things for you to think about. The first thing is half days or shorter days are much better than full days. And I say that because everybody's got a different level of stamina. If your kids are younger or you've got grandparents involved, that really comes into play. There was one day that I sort of maybe had a miscommunication or wasn't really fully aware of how long one of our days in Salzburg was going to be. And we kind of, instead of just focusing on the Sound of Music and maybe Mozart, which is what was most interesting to my family, we kind of tried to do it all in Salzburg and the area around Salzburg. And so we left the hotel at 9 in the morning and didn't get back till after 6. And that was just too long. It's too long. Everybody was tired. Everybody was a little bit grumpy, and so, it's definitely something you want to try and avoid if you can. Those really long days. Especially because, when you come home at 4 in the afternoon, for example, we got to enjoy the hotel. We were staying in beautiful hotels and it had a great lakefront. And so, when you have a little bit of free time or even a full afternoon of free time, everybody can branch off and do their own thing a little bit, or you can just have some more leisure time, relaxation time. And that's really great, for when you've got teens involved. The other thing is you want to mix the kind of serious history stuff with fun downtime stuff. And the way we manage that is, like, for example, in Munich, we had a morning tour, walking tour of the city, the central city, Marienplatz. We watched the Glockenspiel, the big clock tower. We learned about the history of beer making in Bavaria and why it's important. But then in the afternoon, those that wanted to and were still able and active, went and rented bikes and tooled around the city for a couple hours. It was super inexpensive, really fun, lovely way to spend the afternoon. Those, like grandma, that didn't want to ride bikes went back to the hotel to take a nap, relax, read the paper, that kind of a thing. And so that kind of a day worked. Another day, the next day in Munich, we went and sort of did World War II Day. And so we went out to Dachau, the concentration camp, which was, obviously really serious, not a fun visit, but a very worthwhile visit. It was really well done, but it was super, super hot that day. And I don't know if you have seen Dachau, but it's a big open space. There aren't many trees because there were, all of the dormitories, for lack of a better term. And, it's not a particularly shady place. So after that visit, it was a tough visit. It was, intense. We went and had lunch in the Olympic Park in the north of Munich, because it's, Dachau's in the north of Munich. So our driver dropped us off. We had a nice lunch. We wandered around. We went to BMW World. It was much more light, and we got back to the hotel in the mid-afternoon. I think we went to the pool, stuff like that. So mix the heavy, serious history with light, fun, more leisure time. That works really well, much better than a 9-to-5 tour day. Second thing is to try and plan visits that are sort of choose your own adventure, or they're a little bit modular. Like I said, we had the option where you could rent bikes or not. That was a good one. The other one that I'm really thinking of in this case, though, is we had one of our free days up in the mountains. We took an excursion to the Zugspitze. And Zugspitze is the highest mountain in Germany, and you can see 4 countries from the top. And it was a really good activity for our particular family, because those with mobility issues, again, grandma in this case, she could ride up the gondola with us all. We all rode up the gondola together. We all kind of looked around and took some pictures together. But then there were lots of options. So if you wanted to go sledding, you could go sledding. Most of us chose the extremely treacherous sort of mountaineering to go. There's like a little place where you can go out to a cross, and it was terrifying. So only a few of us that were really brave did it, and some of us that did it only went halfway. But, grandma could sit there and watch us do that fun, crazy, daring thing, but she didn't have to do it, because she isn't physically capable of doing that anymore. But she wasn't completely left out of the activity. So finding things like that to do are a really great thing. The third thing that you really want to try and account for or plan for is around meals. And as I said, we were staying in some really nice hotels because grandma was playing, and so we traveled at grandma's taste level. And so we were kind of in 5-star hotels, which was wonderful. And I loved the food. This one particular hotel had, I don't think it was a Michelin-starred restaurant, but a really high-end restaurant, white tablecloth, multiple courses, amuse-bouches, all that stuff. It was fabulous. I loved it. The kids, not so much. Some of my other family members that aren't used to long meals with lots of different courses, they didn't really love it either. So after our long day, when we were tired, we had the guide. The next night, we didn't want to go back to that restaurant, and we had tried their casual restaurant, and it just wasn't suited us particularly because of our big group and things. And so we asked our driver, like, can we stop at a grocery store? And so we stopped at a little grocery store and got picnic supplies and literally had a picnic in our room. And it was adorable and hilarious, and we had the best time. It's one of our favorite memories from the trip, probably, because we could just sort of do our own thing. And again, we could go to the pool and come to the room for our picnic in bathing suits and wet hair. We didn't have to have a formal meal every night. And I think, especially if you go for longer than a week, that's important, because kids, you're just not used to like long formal meals every night. So that was a fun thing to do. And finally, the fourth thing or fifth kind of thing to think about and consider is to do a photo shoot. Now, if you're traveling with multiple generations, there are only a few numbers of years usually that you get to have those trips where you've got grandparents and grandkids together. And those photos, sure, you can take them yourselves and you're gonna take them yourselves, but setting up even just an hour of your time to have a professional photographer take photos of different combinations of family members, the whole family together, is so cool. I kind of forced everyone to do it. They were not into it, but I'd seen other colleagues of mine either take them with their families or share their clients' experiences, and I knew it was a really good experience. And I have to say that at the end of that hour, I mean, we just loved them so much. We got the photos, they're wonderful. There's a photo of my mom and her grandson that is priceless. And, in the backdrop is Munich, and it was beautiful. And our photographer, who was really cute and charming, took us to really neat behind the way places in Munich that we would not have otherwise seen. And so doing a photo shoot is a really awesome thing that you probably wouldn't think about normally. But we now have 35 odd gorgeous family photos that we would not otherwise have. And I mean, there is a difference, even if you're a good photographer, having that professional photographer who can edit and have the lenses and know all about the lighting and stuff like that. It's really helpful. Plus they're local and they can tell you cool stories about their town that they're showing you around. So those are some of the big things to think about when you're planning a multi-generational trip. It's one of my favorite kinds of trips to plan. So I would love it if you would reach out and see if I can help plan your next multi-generational trip. That's it for this week. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.